I'm Lisa. It was when I had just turned 29. I joined something like a group blind date because my friend invited me. Actually, I'm not very good at socializing at that kind of parties. I have refused them countless times so far, but it was just right after my longtime boyfriend cheated on me, and he dumped me. Since I was so heartbroken, I was more reluctant than usual, so, of course I refused at first. But my friend strongly persuaded me that I should have fun, especially right now. She was probably worried about me, and I knew she was trying hard to behave cheerfully for me. I finally got off my butt. Even it was a group blind date, since we all are mid-20s, it's like a marriage hunting, and everyone was secretly so ready for hunting a partner. I was the only one who was not ready and had no energy. In this situation, just like me, there was a man who seemed a little out of place. He was dressed very inappropriately and his hair was shaggy. Not to mention that he wasn't dressed for a group blind date. He also looked weird that might make me say, "What's wrong with him?" even when I would pass him on the street. Even if I have zero ability for hunting a man, or even if I have less than zero ability, I'll be better than this person. He made me think that honestly. It actually made me feel a little better. It's a place I'm not really used to, but it was as if I had a friend who was at the rock bottom just like me. I felt a strange sense of relief, even if it might be rude for him. Are you not good at these kinds of party? I'm not used to it at all either. Because I hesitated to engage in conversations with others for quite some time, so I decided to approach that person randomly. We were both alone, and I thought it would be a good way to just kill the time. However, the response I received from him was unexpected. Well, I actually enjoy these parties. I'm curious about what everyone is lively chatting about. I was stunned. He says he likes this kind of parties, but he says it in a bland tone. And he doesn't look like he's enjoying it. Yet, I didn't think he was lying either. Me stunned and just standing there, he didn't seem to pay any attention to. He casually turned his head towards me and looked straight into my eyes, saying, "You should try to smile a little more. I can tell that you are laughing, but you don't want to. If you don't want to, don't laugh. If you laugh even you don't want to, you should try not to let others notice at least." I was already stunned. By a person I had never met before. I was dissed, quite harshly, but since he kind of got a point, I didn't come up with any objections or anger. And I was deeply convinced somehow. I probably have a habit of doing that. I had nothing to talk back, because it was true as he said. As I completely froze, we were staring at each other in a strange way for a while. When I finally started to think a little bit, I sipped my drink quietly as I was still holding the shock. "I'll be careful from now on," I mumbled in a small voice. I wasn't angry or sarcastic. It just naturally came out of my mouth. And we just stayed there quietly, by each other's sides. My first time at a group blind date ended with such a very strange experience. Some time after, I got a call from a friend, Carol. She caught me and him staring at each other, and she thought, there might have been something between us. That guy, Tim, and I, we didn't really have any feelings each other at the time, but the people around us got strangely excited. We both got a lot of support from our friends. I'm not a very aggressive person myself. I never make a move on my own unless it's a big deal. As for our friends, not setting the bar so high from the beginning. They thought it would be good if we keep in touch casually, and they were trying to get us together going the flow. My friend and one of his friend had known each other for a long time. They knew me and Tim very well, so it was encouraging that they know us well. Among our friends, it seems like they slightly thought that we looked good together. For that reason, Tim and I stayed in touch sometimes. However, nothing really changed rapidly from there. We went out for dinner or somewhere. We did date-like things, so to speak, but there was no romantic vibe. Surprisingly, we had common interests and hobbies, but we both were not the type of people who get hyped often. We always spent our time in a casual way. It was like an extension of being with good friends. Tim, being not the type of romance-oriented person, may have been a big reason of it. "Are you not interested in clothes at all?" I asked him straight one time. Tim was always dressed in worn clothes. After he pointed out a few things to me when we first met, I had lost my mental barrier. To Tim, I naturally came to say what was on my mind. Tim answered without changing his expression, "I am interested. I enjoy thinking about what the person's intention is in their clothes, and what their self-expression is there. As for my own clothes, I just choose what I think is most appropriate for me." I'm always unsure of what Tim says, and yet it somehow convinced me. I found it oddly amusing. Of walking side by side with someone who is dressed in worn clothes. Some people might not like the idea. I didn't mind at all, maybe because I found him interesting in that way. I didn't want to force him to change. Unless he wants to. Maybe I was very comfortable with myself. Like what this is or why this is. Like Tim, I can't explain it theoretically at all, but I just felt that way with my senses. Maybe this is what it means to be with the kind of person you are comfortable with for the rest of your life. I even had such a thought in my mind. No, it can't be true. I thought to myself and laughed at myself. I must have behaved in a very funny way. "You're a funny person, I think." I guess he had just witnessed my behavior. Tim said to me frankly. "The person I think is funny told me that I'm funny." I froze again with a strange look on my face. Then, a few moments later, I couldn't hold my laughter any longer and laughed so hard my stomach hurt. I don't even know what was so funny, but it was strangely funny, and it had been a long time since I had laughed so hard. Tim looked at me with the most dubious expression on his face. He kept staring at me, laughing to tears. After a while, Tim and I officially started dating. And we ended up getting married for real. It felt like kind of weird, but still, it felt just right. It was a relationship for me that I can feel comfortable. I was able to give a quick answer with no hesitation. As usual, most of Tim's clothes were worn and I didn't expect him to earn much money at all, but I was also planning to continue working. For now, I just wanted to have a decent life. As a result, for me, I guess I could say that my marriage was a success in a way. Other people might not have thought it was a success, but I don't care about being poor or anything as long as I truly feel happy. When Tim and I were preparing to get married, my cell phone rang. It was a text message from my ex-boyfriend John. Even though we had been together for a quite long time, it had been a while since we broke up, and I couldn't help but wonder what it was all about. So I just saw the text and let it go. Because I was with Tim when I got the text, so I couldn't text him back even if I wanted to. But even if I hadn't been with him at that time, I don't think I would have texted him back. If I'm being honest, when we were dating, I liked him a lot more than he liked me. I always put up with him even if I didn't like something. Even if he did whatever he wanted, I forgave him most of the time. So I'm sure that in his mind, I would always forgive him and accept him eventually. But now, I'm already awake. I'm not stupid enough to react. He had sent several texts and gave some calls since then, but I ignored them all. I didn't care at all. It was just nothing important for me. Then at one point, Tim looked at me straight in my eyes. It was just like the first time I saw him. As I was wondering why, Tim began to speak in his usual quiet tone. Recently, there's someone you've been getting texts from but not responding to in front of me. As an adult, I believe it's not ideal to ignore texts for so long, so feel free to do whatever you want. You don't have to care about me. I was surprised by his insight as usual, and at the same time, I noticed that Tim, who always speaks with bland tone, looked different from usual. Are you angry at something? When I peeked at him with a puzzled look and asked him that, he frowned even more. Don't change the subject. It was so unusual of him, so I couldn't help but mention it. But I'm not sure what he was angry about. I thought about it a lot, and then it occurred to me. Do you have any idea who I'm getting texts from, by any chance? It's Tim. He must have been looking over everything from a much higher place than me. I don't know why I'm flinching a little now. Tim said with a very cold attitude, giving me a glance. The look on your face when you first saw the text. You looked obviously so disgusted, plus you didn't even reply there, so I could kind of guess. I wondered how much it was written on my face. I couldn't help but forced a smile. But if he knows what a disgusted face is, I'm not sure what he's talking about. If you know it's my ex-boyfriend and I don't like him, why do you have to tell me I should reply? I asked him what I thought with a puzzled look on my face. He became unusually silent. I was curious and looked into his face more. He looked like I had never seen before. Then he began to speak in a few words. As I've witnessed that a few times, even though you didn't reply, you started to look like you weren't disgusted gradually. I was thinking if you contacting with him behind my back. If so, I thought it might be a good idea to clarify this as soon as possible. Tim's eyes were shifty, which was unusual for him. I observed him trying to connect his words together. I, on the contrary, felt relieved and happy. It's Tim, that upset, because he suspects that my ex and I might have gotten back together. I know it's not something I should be happy about, but seeing him with a rare reaction made me very happy. Ha 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 ha. It's okay. I just don't look like a jerk anymore because I don't care. I'm doing nothing behind your back. I laughed it off. And at the same time, I felt sorry. To me, it was nothing that even worth responding to. I hadn't done a good job of saying important things to the person who needed to hear. So I looked straight at Tim again, and spoke in a quiet voice. I should have told you properly. I couldn't imagine how you would feel when you found out. I'm sorry. But thanks to you, I've learned to say everything that's on my mind honestly. I really have nothing to hide. I meant it from the bottom of my heart. That was all I had to say, so I was only hoping that he would know what I meant. I was a little nervous waiting to see what kind of words and reaction I would get from Tim. Just then, my cell phone rang again. It was a little awkward. I looked at my phone as if he's giving me a glance to do it, so it was exactly my ex-boyfriend. I had the perfect ugh look on my face. I could see it myself. Ha 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 ha. In that moment, Tim in front of me started laughing so hard that stomach hurt. I was so surprised. I had never seen him laugh like this before. Tim laughed with tears in his eyes just like me one day. He looked at me stunned and said, I know it now. I apologize for doubting you even a little. You are second to none when it comes to honesty. I wasn't sure if I was being praised or mocked. But since Tim is smiling so happily, I don't really care anymore. I thought in the end. However, my ex-boyfriend's too annoying to get to me. In fact, he was so annoying that I finally responded to him in the last text. I told him clearly not to text me anymore. And yet, he still is texting me. He's quite bothering. After we got married, we talked about living together at the place where Tim has been living for now. But it's not far from my house. My ex, who knows where I live, might happen to see me. I got a little scared thinking about it. Why don't we find a new place to live somewhere? It doesn't matter if it's small or not. I suggested this to Tim. And what he said back to me was unexpected. Then, do you want to buy a house? Unintentionally, I simply said, what? It just came out of my mouth. What on earth is he talking about? He's not the type of person to joke around. I thought I must have misheard him. But it was exactly what I heard. Tim really did have enough money to buy a house on the spot. I was so confused what it meant, and I had no idea what was going on. Then Tim smiled a little and said to me, "You know where I work, right? I'm not lying when I say where I work, but it doesn't mean that I'm an employee. That's my company." When I heard all of this, I was still in a daze. I couldn't catch up with what was happening at all. It was a medium-sized marketing company that had been relatively growing well. Tim was not poor or anything. In fact, it's the opposite. He just didn't care about money. He just didn't trust people with money. He always wore worn clothes because he didn't see the need to dress up. And because he didn't want people to come to him because of his appearance. He just chose clothes what he thought was most appropriate for himself. And he wasn't lying about that either. What? The voice sounded like it was going to turn the world upside down. Needless to say, I was the one who made that voice. I didn't even know who I was marrying to. I know it's funny, but I was so carefree, and I was wrapped around his little finger. Tim himself was staring at me with a kind of satisfied look on his face, so I guess it's not bad at all. Then we bought a house in a really quiet place in the suburbs. We spend our weekends together, relaxing. Without any worries, living with someone I can trust. I realize that life is funny. We have found the right partner for each other, and I am certainly happy now.